September 11th. It's about 4 o'clock. This is a meeting of the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation Real Estate Development Advisory Committee. Present for the committee, Dave Christian, Kathy Grimm, South Howard Pollard, Chair. Present for the, and also
Erica Lewandowski.
Erica Lewandowski, who is our delegate on behalf of the Director of Budget and a member of the board. Present for the corporation, Francis Walton, CFO, Don Lewis, General Counsel, Vice President, Charlene Delicato, President, and also present for the board, just joining us is Margie Smith.
Michael's outside too. Michael is outside too.
Oh. Well, pause for a moment, but the sole agenda item that's scheduled is my call for an executive session to consider an agenda item on our meeting later today, which is authorization and consent to assignment of lease by Northtown Roosevelt LLC, Eastwood tenant, to DSREP UA Roosevelt Landings LLC, and no? Oh, my mistake. Honestly, that's what happens when you look at the agenda very quickly. Okay, so since Don Lewis wisely points out that since this is not in the nature of negotiation, we're having open discussion regarding the agenda item itself, preparation for a board meeting. So,
we also need to call in Barbara Brown as our outside counsel.
okay.
Hey, Mike.
Review the transaction.
Let's just pull up a chair.
That's okay.
Michael didn't mean to.
Sure he did, he saw you, he smashed.
I know, I'm not taking this personal, it's
Josh
okay.
Eisenberg, he's the head of urban
Barbara.
America.
Okay, I'm in a room full of people. Howard Pollard, who's the chair of the
Nice guy.
committee, just to introduce everyone. We're getting ready to get started. I have mentioned to everyone, this is Barbara Brown from Carter Ledger, who is our outside counsel, who reviewed and advised us on the transaction and who has offered to be available to help answer any questions that the board and anyone else may have.
And,
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
hi,
afternoon.
Barbara. I guess in introduction, why we're not having an executive meeting is that it really is not negotiated. This is a formula agreement in the sense that there is a clause, I believe it's Article 10, that states that the consent is needed by RIOC if there is an assignment of any interest. This is an assignment of interest. RIOC's concern is we cannot withhold without a reason, and we cannot unreasonably withhold anything, with our consent. Which really means that we have to do our due diligence and make sure that this assignment keeps the status quo in the sense of the ground lease, that nobody's hurt, that we get a transaction fee, which is done by formula and really is not negotiated, which will be in the amount of $2.7 million. That we make sure that the viability of the company that it's being assigned to is able to continue the good work. One of the other things in this assignment is that Urban America will continue as property manager. Maureen will continue as director, and she will continue to give the good service. And this is really solely a transaction that was contemplated within the agreement, the ground lease itself, totally allowable, totally really just a matter of crossing the T's, dotting the I's on everybody's parts. We've done it. We've also gone the extra distance that we are assuring the affordability plan to, and the ability of RIOC to give the proper services and to maintain the island by requesting, after we had heard that there were very preliminary discussions with New York City as to some affordability components and tax abatements, we requested a letter stating that none of our ground lease, none of our agreements would suffer from any agreement with the city. So we remain status quo. Whatever any other company does, or whatever the company, I believe, it's really long, it's BSREP. Whatever negotiations that are had will only contribute to affordability, will not take away from affordability. And other than that, I don't think there's any other.
And on the theme of affordability, one other note about Barbara has done a number of these transactions for us, and as we typically have done when the residential buildings come for us with this type of thing, there is another agreement with them that they are paying for the services Barbara in reviewing the transaction, because they're asking for us, so the directors should know that we are not paying for Barbara to be here, but she's extremely helpful.
Yeah, and the transaction fee that we're getting, as it says, it's somewhere in the vicinity of $2.7 million, is contemplated in many of these agreements as one of the pots that would contribute to the continuing operation. So it's, you know, it's a very standard, from what I understand from Barbara, it is completely standard in all of our leases and in many other leases, in order for us to do what we need to do as an operating corporation.
When were you notified of this? I see here that they went into agreement on July 18th. The purchase and sale agreement dated as of July 18th.
I don't think we knew on August 18th. I knew sometime thereafter. However, there were a number of things that we had to figure out because we just didn't have any other information on it, that we were gathering information during that time to today.
After you found out about
Yeah,
this.
and it was after
the purchase.
Well, it was after August 18th.
Is there any reason why RIOC was not notified earlier of the agreement as I guess the desire to sell, purchase? Doreen, it's just a matter of, Katrina, you know, for me, it's just a matter of being informed earlier that the transaction is going to take place, or you're thinking about doing this, because as Charlene said, is that it's just a matter of it has been agreed in the past. It's something that we have to do from the past, I guess you'd say, agreement. But it seemed as if we should have been informed prior, a little earlier.
There was absolutely no intention not to inform the board as soon as we were in a position to inform the board. There's a lot of confidentiality surrounding this deal, and we're just merely still at this point at contract. And should this deal go south for some reason, we would need to be able to start again, and we wouldn't want the exposure of all the terms and conditions of this deal exposed to the public. It's no slight whatsoever to this board in any shape, form, or fashion.
No, I wasn't asking for any
okay.
general information. It's just, this is what we're doing. Because things like this seem to happen quite a great deal on Roosevelt Island. It seems as if you're informed later rather than earlier.
Well, if I understand Doreen correctly, this is not final yet.
Yes, I heard that, but I'm looking at this thing here that says, well, it's a purchase and sale agreement. Okay, agreement. I see the word agreement here. Okay.
So, you know, just by agreements, all terms are not final, even today. So, this is one of the many moving parts in the second transaction, which I gather is quite complex. the tape is running. Doreen, you're here, could you introduce your patrons?
Yes, would be my pleasure to do that. Those of you who know me, I'm Doreen Isling. I'm the portfolio manager for Urban American. With me is Joshua Eisenberg, one of the principals of Urban American. Sitting next to him is Jonathan Moore, VP of Brookfield. That's right.
Yes.
Okay.
It's time.
What's your official title?
I'm a vice president of investments with Brookfield.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in defense, and to answer this question, in defense of Brookfield and of Urban America, many of these, once something gets out like this, it really does affect the negotiations. And we all would have liked a little more time, but I think it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately, that larger deals have a short time frame. And in fact, I have to apologize to you that we had to do everything so quickly. It is a matter of banks, etc. It's very much like a house closing. When they set the time, and then all of a sudden everybody has to move. And it's not so different. But as to not talking about the negotiations, it was so preliminary at first. To tell you the truth, we heard a rumor, and we called, and Doreen was put in somewhat of an awkward position because it was so initial that there wasn't a deal. So it was just a little defense aspect of it.
Okay. So one of the key actions that RIOC has undertaken is to secure a memo, which is appended to our board material, which explains that the assignment will not result in a change in condition for the existing tenancy, both in terms of management and in terms of their lease agreements or any other agreements that may be in effect, including the Section 8 subsidies, including the existing LAP program. So that's important news as far as I'm concerned, that we have that assurance.
Chair, may I ask if there are any change to the amount of debt service that the building will have to support after this transaction takes place?
I don't think we're in a position to know that. We see that there is an offset allowing that the existing mortgage is being paid off. The offsets the otherwise existing charge. Whether it's being replaced exactly that amount, in other words, an in-kind replacement, or whether there's another change, that'll be a separate transaction if it's an element under the ground lease that stands with these.
Barbara, could you speak to that as to the ramifications of knowing or not knowing that information?
Well, I don't know. I was told that they intend to do financing on the purchase. This, I should note, is part of an overall purchase. Brookfield is buying a number of different building complexes from other sellers at the same time. So this is one part of a much larger purchase. I am told that there is financing that is being obtained. Our Eastwood lease does not require RIOC's consent for any financing on the property, nor are we entitled to any transaction payment in connection with their financing on the property. So we really are not involved in that aspect of the transaction.
Yeah, this is my question. Thank you, sir. The reason I asked has almost nothing to do with whether or not we're going to get transaction fees. It's about there were a series of buildings across the city that were involved in transactions similar to this, that shortly after the process of taking them out of the Islamic program, they were flipped several times, burdened with huge debt service. Any of the lower end tenants were immediately pushed out of the buildings, and some of the buildings ended up going bankrupt. So the question is, to what extent is the building assuming additional debt service requirements? And how will that be managed to be operated in the buildings? And do we have any guarantees that that won't result in negative impacts to the tenants? And people can't say, oh, that doesn't happen, but we all know for a fact that it does.
Right. The paperwork that we have in place does not deal with that. We don't, the answer is I don't know what financing they're putting on, and we don't have any particular provisions which limit the amount of financing they can put on or otherwise deal with that.
Just, no, I don't want this to sound like I don't care about the people in the building, because obviously I do. I'm just wondering, are we overstepping our bounds here?
We probably are, but I just want to express that concern because it's going to happen. I was going to say, why didn't we ask about it? So
yeah, but I think what we have a right to ask and an obligation to ask is, are all the conditions still going to be met? And if we're being assured that they are, and then as far as the financial part of that, there is this transaction fee that's already been agreed to. I think we sort of
so there's
our
nothing we can.
obligations
So
come into
at the
that.
bottom line, there's nothing we can really do about it.
No, and I think maybe the question really is, and this is a question for you, Barbara, are there clauses and abilities within the ground lease and other agreements that would allow us to take some action if in fact there, as Michael says, that there was a financial issue coming up?
As long as they're meeting their lease obligations and paying the amounts they're supposed to be paying under the ground lease, there really is nothing else that we would be involved in terms of monitoring their financial transactions or obligations.
Right. So it's just, as long as they meet that.
And meet the requirements
Well,
of Section 8.
for example,
affordability
some of the
requirements.
contentious issues in that particular building right now has been like sub-metering, and the building has tried a number of times to put down the tenants without doing the appropriate efficiency improvements to the building, which would be financially devastating to most of the people in the building because the building is so energy inefficient. The cost of running that building is very high. Part of that is because the prior administrations didn't monitor the programs, the capital programs under which they were under, which is history part of this, but it's a fact that exists. And in fact, one of our prior administrations who came here from the organization that was supposed to be doing those checks, those inspections and checks, and didn't do them under her administration in the city. So if they're assuming a larger debt burden, and they're going to try to push out some of the operational expenses by, again, further pursuing the sub-metering, pushing those costs of the common areas as well as the inefficient apartments back on the tenants again, that's a negative impact they're going to have to the tenants that we have no control over and nothing to say about it. So,
I understand your point.
because these are some of the things that I had brought up when we initially did the agreement to allow them to come up out of Itchalama, that these protections should have been in place, and they were not in place, and there were some abuses at the time, shortly after they came out. And at that time, I was the one who voted against the original deal because these protections were not in place.
But again, wasn't that DHCR's
Yes,
obligation, not ours?
and they didn't do it. So,
The concern.
Things I don't like.
a lot of things you don't like, but again, there's nothing we can do about this, but.
To delve into that issue, which is not an issue of assignment per
Yeah.
se, would not be within the ground lease. It says that it can't be unreasonably withheld or delayed.
Or conditions.
Or conditions,
So there's nothing we can do about it. Okay. I'm fine with it.
I don't inherently think it's going to be a bad thing. I'm kind of optimistic about it. But I understand your concerns, but
It's just for the understanding, the management company is staying in place. The ownership is changing, and they're changing the finance stuff, which means they're pulling money out. So that means that the building has to generate more revenue to support the same debt service. Now that money has to come from somewhere. So either they think they're going to have a large step up in rents or a major decrease in operational expenses to cover that debt service.
Doreen may want to say something.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that if Mr. Eisenberg can be allowed to explain briefly the structure of the deal,
Okay.
I think we'll be able to very easily put your fears to rest. Trust me, we are in superb footing here. Our future looks extremely bright. We are very, very excited about this merger of the two companies. It's a win-win for the residents. It's a win-win for urban American. It's a win-win for Roosevelt Island. Unfortunately, at this point, you probably don't have every piece of information that you would like to have, and for that, we are sorry. But with what information we can share with you right now, we'll be glad to put your fears to rest. I can assure you, a vote for us would not be a bad vote. It is a wonderful acquisition and a change for these residents. I cannot say it enough. I've been here a long time, guys, and I'm really, really excited about what the future looks like, especially for our Section 8 residents. And
And our seniors and our handicapped.
well, everybody. We're just one family. I don't identify them by a rank, name, and serial number. They all come from one pot, and they're our residents. And as you know, we've been community-minded. We're going to continue to be community-minded. Nothing about that is going to change. We've always led the way in all of your island activities. We're going to continue to lead the way in your island activities. Residents are our first priority. But let me just back up a moment, because I think that if Mr. Eisenberg can explain to you briefly the financial structure, that might put you at ease.
That will help, but just
Okay.
part of it is you have been very involved in the community, and we have been able to do a lot of these things. And when we look at this deal, it's basically just financial engineering.
Mhm.
Then the question is, again, if they're pulling money out, there's a greater debt
We
burden
got
on
the
the
question.
community.
We got
Well,
the question. Let us answer the question.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's hear.
So,
Let's hear what your answer is.
just to clarify, Doreen mentioned the word merger.
Well, I
Since
should-
we're on the record and this is also being recorded by the press, it's not a merger, it's a joint venture between us and Brookfield. With respect to the question about debt, first and foremost, keep in mind that for the last 7 years, this portfolio, including this building, has paid all of its debt service out of cash flow. And it was underwritten from the very beginning to pay all of its debt service out of cash flow. It's, despite differing opinions from uninformed parties, the portfolio has never been over-leveraged. Keeping that in mind, this transaction will actually pay down a portion of the overall debt and allocate it to this particular property, so there will be less debt on this portfolio and this property going forward. So that should, if it's been fine till now, it'll be even better going forward. With respect to the energy efficiency and the sub-metering, in the last 4 years, we've done a tremendous amount of energy efficiency work to Roosevelt Landings, more so than was required by the Public Service Commission's decisions involving the sub-metering orders, including a cogeneration facility that makes up for 15% of the building's electric load. We have done deep air sealing throughout all of the apartments, including foam behind all the windows, cracks, floor joists. We did foam insulation underneath all of the breezeways and tunnels. We've also put in not only the thermostats that the Public Service Commission has required us we install, but we installed a smart system, which is completely controllable from an internal energy management system, so that we can control set points throughout the entire complex, and that's 3,500 different set points. There's a thermostat not in every apartment, as the PSC wanted, but every room. So it controls the heat in a much more efficient way. This heating season proved to us that the thermostatic system and the energy management system has reduced electricity in each apartment by more than 35%. And that's before we even talk about sub-metering, which, by the way, hasn't actually occurred yet, and we're still working through that process with the PSC. So I hope that solves, or at least resolves, some of the concerns that I think are very real concerns, and they have been in the past, and we've always stepped forward to try to resolve those concerns with real, pragmatic, and practical solutions that go far above and beyond what was required of us.
Okay, that's terrific.
up until now, I know you guys have been doing some good work. That's why I asked the questions about saying, is that going to continue?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
if you, as a master's of finance, if this, because we didn't get the details of the transaction, so if you were suddenly assuming a much larger debt burden, then some of these things would have to be curtailed.
Right.
Versus you saying you're reducing the debt burden, so that's a positive,
And
which
we're
we didn't
also,
know.
and we're actually committing more capital to further improvements to the building as well. So we're not only continuing the work that we did before, but we have new projects coming online that will improve the building even further, including tenant comfort, affordability, that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Can you get an air conditioner for the exercise room? That's all I hear. We love the exercise class, but it's too high.
I'll work on that immediately.
One of the things I hear about is whether we're going to fix some of the plumbing leaks that are directly in line with the cultural
center.
center.
Yes.
I hear that one a lot on the street too.
That is a priority as well, and I think that we've worked through the majority of that. We cannot stop the day-to-day, but we have located some significant leaks that we had, and they've been repaired.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
I have to say that one of the presidents of the Tenants Association, Rose Mitchell, talking this weekend, she heard that this might come before us and expressed tremendous enthusiasm that her tenancy notices and feels about this transaction. I feel it will help stabilize and make further improvements possible within the building structure.
With the limited information I was able to share with the key people involved in our various resident associations, I did sit with them, I did meet with them. I gave them a bird's eye view of what the future was going to look like, and yes, they are very excited, Joyce being one of them.
That's great.
At some point in the near future, I want to talk to you. I had a brief discussion with Charlene about it, about some changes to the hydrology and landscaping around this space between the building and the east channel, the East River. I was in Singapore and a couple other places. They had some interesting ideas because you had the issue at the last storm where the water came down and flooded the basement. So the extent to which we can do some interesting things with a stage, we can't actually raise the seawall. We can do some interesting things perhaps with assuming that that area is going to flood and building a tiered structure between, like at the side of the road and the other side of the road, that we can then block off quickly and even prevent the water from flowing down the steps into the building.
We will be all ears.
So,
Yes.
if you some of the areas in the country, like in Singapore, it's an island, or wherever we're watching it, they have some interesting engineering aspects, and also in Amsterdam, places like that, where they deal with water a lot.
Okay.
And I saw some interesting ideas, and I said, hey, we should look at that.
All right. Okay. I think
There is some areas that the Z grid sort of have some, and I know you've been working and looking at it, and that would be a perfect place that we would look at that type of operation.
Very good.
Any other questions? One of our other board members, David Kraut, he's not here yet, but he's a resident in Roosevelt Landings. And one thing he would wish me to ask about is the possibility of better entry control systems, whether it be concierge or whether it be through a better key entry system or something of that nature.
This is something that we've knocked around for years, and it also is a high priority as we move forward. It is certainly something that we're going to give a lot of thought to, and we're going to also ask for a lot of input from our residents on, because we do have 9 entrances.
Doreen, have you guys considered the virtual doorman concept? Where you plug it in and they're doorman in the sky and they see you and they let you in or they don't let you in? I'm sure you have. Okay.
It's an option. Let me just say it's an option. You know, we're not going to say no to anything at this point. It's something that, as I said, we've discussed in the past, and we're going to give a lot of consideration to moving forward.
And here he is. Well, we just answered your question, David. Missed.
I didn't want to put a hearing aid in.
Okay, and then,
Oh,
what
it
they
was
say?
before you arrived.
Right.
I'm not hearing anything, you couldn't hear anything.
Okay. One of the things, David, that you missed was a little bit of a description of what's going on. And Mike Shinazaki had expressed some concern that in some other transactions that at first blush appear similar to this one of the results is an increased debt service on the property, which then requires struggle to maintain, the struggle taking, the solution taking the form of either reduction to services or increase in rents, pressure to increase rents. And we understand, of course, nothing is quite fixed yet, but that there will be reduced debt service on the building, that as in the past, the building will maintain itself through its cash flows, and that there'll be continued improvements to the structure and services offered to all the tenants.
Well, that's interesting, because there's a history of people making promises to Eastwood residents, and they're not keeping them. And if they have verbally presented the notion that they're going to keep promises of services or whatever, I'd like to see that in writing this time. I'd like to see a very specific list. And I'd like to see some earlier promises kept, which were not kept. Just as a minimum, this would be, of course, in addition to questions of debt service and other promises made.
Okay, well, we have to read here.
The answer is I want to just let it play out. But
Yeah. I mean,
Well, I'm not prepared to present it to particulars. I only saw this in my mailbox this morning.
Okay.
And I haven't had a chance to contact any of the people that were involved in the Eastwood Urban American discussions when the original conversion was made.
Okay.
Until I've done so, I can't be specific.
Well, one of the reasons it's done.
This is just, David, there was some conversation a lot before, but this is really just a request for an assignment pursuant to the lease that's already in place, for us to consent to an assignment that they are making.
I understand
And
that.
the language of the lease says that our power over that assignment cannot be unreasonably withheld, conditioned.
Well, it's a question of what's reasonable and what's not, isn't it?
It can't be conditioned, I believe.
Can't be conditioned.
Can't be what?
Condition, we can't
Cannot be
put any
unreasonably
conditions on
withheld,
it.
conditioned, or delayed.
Okay. And that's the agreement you wrote?
No, this is the Eastwood ground lease for maybe 2007.
Huh.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
You may not be able to answer this, but in terms of affordability agreements, one of the things that has saddened a number of us greatly is the fact that the amount of senior housing that's available sort of dissipates as people die. And I don't know whether there's any chance that that could be reversed as part of affordability agreements. I mean, with the baby boomers all aging out, I mean, there's a huge need for senior citizen housing at an affordable rate. And so they're not necessarily, I don't think they're necessarily, I don't know whether they go under Section 8 or not, but, it's sort of been sad to see the senior building become a yuppie building, because, I have occasion to be there periodically, and I see who comes down out of the elevators, and I think it's nice that they happen to be in, have nice apartments and so on, but I don't know, I feel bad about the fact that, there's less opportunities for seniors who have limited means.
At this particular time, it's probably not the best time to go through the whole educational process of the type of vouchers we have and how our vouchers operate. But I would be more than glad to sit with you and walk you through, and so that you thoroughly understand the constraints that we're under in terms of our funding and the Section 8 Enhanced Voucher Program that we're involved in. But since, as Charlene mentioned earlier, that there are some discussions about maintaining the affordability of some of our units, I'm sure that will be part of the discussion moving forward.
we certainly will take that into consideration and make Meadow know of that.
Okay.
When does that discussion take place?
Excuse me?
When does that discussion take place?
Which discussion were you referring to?
The one that you just mentioned.
The affordability?
Yeah.
Those are negotiations that Charlene mentioned before that happen to be ongoing currently between Urban American and the City of New York, as well as Brookfield.
Well, I must have misunderstood your answer to Dr. Grimm. She said she asked a specific sort of a question.
You're right. I said I'd be glad to speak
You said you can't revisit that right now.
at her whenever she wants me to. I'll be glad to sit with her.
Okay,
Well, will there be any, I guess the bottom line is, will there be any net change in the number of apartments that are designated for voucher eligibility? Because the sticky vouchers stick with the tenant, but then there's no place for them to go or use them unless they go way out to the outer boroughs. I mean, way out to the outer boroughs. So then they complain that, well, yeah, we have the vouchers that now go with us rather than with the building, but there's nowhere to use them.
The enhanced voucher program is good as an enhanced voucher as long as that resident remains in the building that they were residing in at the time they were issued that voucher. That voucher being enhanced voucher only allows the city or the government to pay us at a higher rate of rent. Should they decide to move, and they can go anywhere in the country, they can even go to Puerto Rico, they can go to California, they can go anywhere they want with their voucher. If they should decide to move, if they should decide to relocate down south, they will take that voucher with them. The only difference will be is that the voucher will revert back to a standard Section 8 voucher, which simply means that whatever rate of rent that they subsidize is at a lower rate. However, when you have that type of voucher, when you vacate that apartment does go market.
I think that's what Kathy was talking
Yeah, every time a senior
Yes, I
moves,
understand.
we lose that apartment as something
Yeah.
available for seniors or for people who need affordable housing in the complex. So in theory, eventually we would be at zero.
Well, many years down the road, many years down the road, I don't think any of us will be around at that time, but that's what the talks are about that are going on right now, to maintain some affordability in the development. I'm not saying that this will or it won't happen. There's no promise that it will happen. We don't sit here before you saying that this will happen. We're simply saying that we are engaged in talks with the city and other agencies at the possibility of being able to do that. And I think that's a wonderful thing that we're even willing to go to the table to discuss it. What will eventually come out of it, no one can say right now. But we are willing to have these discussions and we are open to the concept.
May I make one comment though about the affordability plan, because as you know, like Octagon has quote-unquote affordable apartments.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different criteria that are used, you know, for affordability. So, you know, when Island House and Westview were still ongoing, I mean, Westview is still Mitchell-Lama, but, you know, their waiting list is closed. But, you know, if you compare the rents related to income from Island House and Westview, you know, and what they were paying based on family income, and you looked at the quote-unquote affordable apartments in Octagon, there was a huge difference between the two. So in many ways, the affordable apartments in Octagon are really for middle class, as opposed to people who are near poor. And my understanding is that they were using as a guideline income for the Upper East Side, which really did not represent the demographics at that time of Roosevelt Island. So, you know, I just want to comment about that because, you know, if you have to earn $60,000 a year in order to rent a studio in Octagon or in that range, that's not the same, that's not what we were used to here, okay, in terms of affordability on Roosevelt Island. So, you know, I'm hoping that in your negotiations with the city, you know, if you end up having affordable housing, that it really is truly affordable, since there's a lot of people that don't earn that much money in the city and are having trouble making ends meet. Because our hope is that we don't have, just the ultra rich and the ultra poor in the city, because that ultimately is not the best thing for the health of the city.
So noted.
You stated you're having talks with the city. Who exactly is they in the city, and when are these discussions happening?
Well, they in the city are various politicians and the agencies, the HPD agency for one, that are a part of the discussions at this time, and of course Urban American and Brookfield.
And when are these taking place?
Well, there was one today.
That doesn't help today, but
It's
there are
an
scheduled.
It's an ongoing process.
dialogue. I mean, it's a process that's going to require a lot of.
There's no scheduled meetings on this time.
No.
I think, if I may interject here, I think everybody's got good intentions here, but we're the wrong group to be coming up with a solution to affordable housing in the city. I think that the government helped us for a lot of times, but they gave us a 25-year program.
Well,
And
that's the
then we're
problem.
long
I mean, that's
over
the
that.
problem we've always been, is that this isn't the city. This is the
Right.
state.
But
And
the
we
state
have
did the same
provisions
thing.
in our charter, in our corporate charter, and in our general development plan that says we have certain things we're supposed to do. So we say that they're in discussion with the city. This isn't the city.
No, but that's DHCR's piece of our general development. They're supposed to decide, Herb Berman, remember, when
Right.
we went through all of it,
But
they determine what's affordable and what, is this an affordability plan or is it not? And we just salute. It's not up to us to determine if it's affordable. If it is, then we do our calculations based on a building that has an affordability plan. But what I'm saying is, having been on the board in Rivercross, I can see the budget it takes to maintain a building that gets 25 and 30 years old, and it's not the same as the brand new ones. And affordability, the Mitchell-Lama program was great for 25-year-old, for buildings between 1 and 25 years old. Then you have to start replacing elevators and roofs and carpeting and all, and it's very hard to maintain the same maintenance and rents and still keep a building in good enough shape that people want to live in it. And my idea of Mitchell-Lama was, after that 25 years, you either got on your feet and got moved out and moved someplace that you could afford because you were making more money, or you moved on to another Mitchell-Lama building that was just starting out, and that's where the city and state were going to help you out with some tax subsidies. And we got put right in the middle of all this, and we're trying to solve all these problems without any real authority to do it.
We're an
That's my
operating
speech for the
corporation.
day.
Still a challenge.
Yeah, it's still a challenge. I feel very bad.
The
But
problem
we're
is-
in the middle of it. We're not.
Well, then, and if that's the case, then we should just amend the charter. Because it's still in our charter.
It is, and it's in the law that we develop, operate, and maintain.
So I'm not sure how we
We don't have any authority to, I mean, that's nice to say, but we don't really have any authority to do anything about that.
But I think the thing is that we're talking about it, and I think it's
Absolutely, and
important
I
they
think we
hear
should
us.
continue touching. I'm
Because
just-
if you know, when
I want
we,
them to
when
look into the guys that can do something
when
about it.
those of us who, we were all elected, with the exception of David, but he's been a
Excuse
long
me,
term.
I was elected, but it's before you were born.
Right, okay, but anyway, when we were elected, okay, as, members of the board, everybody had on that platform affordable housing.
Absolutely.
Everybody did,
Absolutely.
okay, that was a very key issue. And then after I came on the board, I felt very unempowered, okay, as it related to affordability. But that doesn't mean that we don't try to negotiate it,
Right, and I'm not
okay,
suggesting we
and
should.
speak up on behalf of affordable housing.
I'm just saying a place where it can really happen, kind of like that, is in where where the laws can be enacted and the big tax dollars can be chipped away at.
Let the tape reflect that Commissioner Darrell Towns, chair of our board, has joined us. And
Right.
and we're hoping to arrange a chair for him.
You kept him standing in the corner.
One thing about Roosevelt Island, I used to describe it like Epcot, because Epcot was just coming into being, and it was an experimental prototype community of the future. And I used to compare it to Roosevelt Island. We're all going to live together, different nationalities, different ethnicities, different income levels, and everybody's going to live together in harmony and peace and wonderfulness. And I think for a long time that was true. And I would love for us to be part of any kind of experiment that the city and state may wanna have to continue the affordable housing. I just don't think we have the right solution right now, but we certainly can be part of it. And we ought to be.
Well, the question is, what do we do about this agenda item today? And considering the great questions that you've raised, and Dr. Grimm and others, and also the fact that no direct stakeholders are here at the moment who have heard any of this, by which I mean the people who stake in affordable housing, by which I mean my neighbors. The only person in this room who lives in Eastwood is myself. I've been there since before Kathy was born. And, but I pay a fair market rent. Does that mean that I personally have no stake in the building maintaining affordability? No, it does not. And therefore, when we get to the meeting, I'm going to move that we table this for a minute so that people can be heard of, and so we as a board have the opportunity to examine the issues that have been raised here.
That timing could be a problem based on some discussion we had before you came in, and you guys can explain that, I guess, better.
Can we
I
go
don't know
into
if it is.
executive session, in procedural matter,
I think we should step outside.
or you said
I'll
okay?
step outside.
And what was that point, Reggie?
That there is a procedure and a time frame on the project right now, and I don't have any particular.
Need be?
Yeah.
We're all doing out.
Oh, we're all, isn't that pretty
I
much
have no
it?
idea.
Roosevelt Landings transaction.
Well, you guys came out,
Yes,
we came back, we
Rick?
expected something.
Is there
Nothing?
is there anything in the agreement that contemplates the eventual termination of Urban American's right to manage the property? And wouldn't that be of interest to the RIOC board in this,
We're not.
in your
Yeah.
consent?
I think,
That's between the owners
yeah,
and
the owners
and
change
the
management
operator.
companies all the time.
So
I
that
don't
would
think we
not
have
be of
anything to say.
interest to the
It would be
RIOC
a-
board?
I don't
be of
be interested, but I don't
interest,
think we can do about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't, where was it before Urban America? It was, something else before Urban America.
They changed
Roosevelt
some-
Island Housing Management,
Yeah, there you go.
but that was,
But that was, yeah.
I think, no, there's not, and I think that really cuts both ways, because you wanna give anybody a lifetime job, and no offense to them, but so it sort of, it sort of
Rough
cuts
crowd.
both ways, I mean, and you
it's
don't
like
tie
I've been here
people-
for my lifetime.
Okay,
So,
so,
no, there's no contemplation of a guarantee of Urban America, or anybody else, but nor did they expect so, nor does anybody expect.
Barbara, I think, thank you very much for your help. Any further comment? Done. Good.
Goodbye, Barbara.
Don, just a